What's up, everyone? Welcome to this day in Philly sports history for October 1st, 2024. I'm your host, Jim Montgomery. Welcome to a Tuesday edition, the first day of October, and it is Tuesday, so time for a little motivation / positivity. And I saw a few variations of this quote, but the quote is, don't try to impress others. Instead, live the kind of life that if you met yourself, you would be impressed. And that really, to me, is it really hits home a lot because it essentially is saying you do you and the other stuff will fall into place. I think we spend a lot of time in our society worrying about what other people think, trying to impress people, whether it be with our clothes, cars, houses, other material things, whatever it is. We're always trying to impress someone else. And I like that because you have to do what's best for you and your family. And if you're doing that and living a life that you would be impressed if you met yourself, then you're doing something right. And it took me a long time to sort of get there. And I mean, essentially, do whatever you're doing, but do it well. Live a life of integrity. Do the right thing, even if nobody else is looking. And the rest will kind of play itself out. And I also take that to mean do what makes you happy. Don't do something because you feel you need to impress somebody by doing it. Again, whether it's with a job, not doing a hobby because of this, that, or the other, or actually doing something you don't like because you're trying to impress somebody. At the end of the day, you have to look yourself in the mirror and you have to like the person you see when you're in the mirror. So do what makes you happy and don't try to impress the others. Live the kind of life that if someone else met you, they would be impressed. And I kind of go through that a lot when I make decisions, and whether it's personal, professional, with the podcast, with whatever, do what you feel is best for you and makes you happy, and the rest will just all fall into place. So as you go through your week, hopefully that's something that can stick with you, but don't try to impress others. Do something that if you met yourself, you'd be impressed. I saw some other versions of this is don't impress others, impress yourself. Same basic premise and concept, but don't try to keep up with the Joneses and don't try to be like, oh, I got to do this. And even especially if it's not something you want to do. Like if you want to do that, by all means, do it. That's perfectly fine, but don't do it to impress others. Do it because it's something you want to. And that is our Tuesday motivation / positivity for today. All right, a lot to get into today, so let's knock out some housekeeping first. Follow me on social media, Jimbo_Mont, Twitter and TikTok. On Instagram, @PhillyJimbo. I'm on LinkedIn, Facebook, whatever. You can find me. Subscribe to the YouTube channel. Leave a review, comment, all that other good stuff. That's all things that help grow the podcast. And then spread the word. If it's something you're enjoying, tell somebody else about it because chances are they're going to enjoy it as well. For October, we got a lot going on. We're going to start our Red October preview today. Well, not necessarily a preview, but focus. Then we'll go into a Sixers preview, followed by the Philadelphia Sports Hall of Fame spotlight. And if you want information on the Philadelphia Sports Hall of Fame, all the information you need is down in the description. All right, let's start with the Eagles. Yesterday, the question of the day asked you, who is more responsible for the loss? Was it Sirianni, Hurts, or Fangio? 78% of you put it on Nick Sirianni. And this is how intertwined these guys are. This is like all day yesterday when I was doing it, and just now today. I want to say Nick Hurts. So that's just, to me, how intertwined they are. But Nick Sirianni, with 78% of your vote, was the answer. Thank you, as always, for participating in the question of the day. Lots of Jalen versus Nick feedback, and I want to make sure I'm clear on this. I am not behind Nick Sirianni 100% at all right now. So I don't want you to think I'm sticking up for Nick. I'm not. I think he didn't have that team ready, and there's no excuse for that. And that 100% falls on the coach. I really feel, and until somebody tells me or shows me different, I look back and watch some of the game footage and everything. that team came out like it was a scheduled loss. Like they were looking forward to the bye week already, and it was ridiculous. And I don't want to hear about it was hot. No, you're a professional football player. You need to go out and do your job. Just like I don't have a choice when I go in to my job every day and I have teachers and kids who need me. I can't just mail it in. You can't mail it in. You're a professional. Act like it. So that's on Nick. But with Jalen, and I mean, I saw a lot of folks talking on social media yesterday, a lot of talk on the radio stations. I don't think he's the guy. Or I shouldn't say the guy. I don't think he's that guy that we all thought he was. And I don't think he's as bad as he's been playing recently. I think it's almost like he's in a slump like a hitter. But I also don't think he's as good as he was that year they went to the Super Bowl. I think that was lightning in a bottle and more of an anomaly. I think the real Jalen Hurts he's a good NFL quarterback that when he has good days, he's going to be phenomenal. And when he doesn't have good days, he's going to be And I keep going back to this. I said it yesterday. I commented on a few social media posts yesterday. Who does he make better? To me, a great quarterback makes the players around him better. You see like Josh Allen and Patrick Mahomes in today's game, Lamar Jackson. Those guys make the players around them better. But I don't see that from Jalen. Jalen's the kind of guy that needs the players around him in order to be good. And it is what it is. That's not necessarily a knock, but it's just what I see. And I go back, and maybe I'm too old school. I looked at Donovan McNabb going to NFC Championship games with Todd Pinkston and James Thrash as his receivers. Yes, it took T.O. to take him over the top, but he was a great quarterback without T.O. T.O. was sort of the icing on the cake. Look at Tom Brady. Tom Brady, early in his career, won Super Bowls with Troy Brown, and I forget the guy's name who won the MVP. I can picture his face. I can't think of his name. That won the MVP the year the Eagles lost to them. Troy Brown was playing cornerback for the Patriots sometimes. He made the players around him better. And I don't see that from Jalen. And to me, in order to be a great elite quarterback, that's what you need. He does not do that. And to all the people that messaged me yesterday, you have not showed me an example of where Jalen makes his teammates better. I'm waiting for it. So that is where I came from with that. Some news and kind of put the bow on this as we go into the bye week. Slay did apologize on Twitter for his posting of his stats. He said it was, quote, out of character and I'm better than that. But really, are you? You do that all the time. It's one thing to say, oh, I'm better than that. It's out of character. I don't think it's out of your character, dude. That's who you are. Embrace it. It is what it is, but don't tell me that's not who you are when all last year you were throwing out stats and saying, I played well, it was the team, and you're putting out this, that, and the other. Dude, okay, that's not you, if that's what you say. But then he was on Michael Parsons' podcast, and I think it was Michael Parsons, or else Michael Parsons was on his, whatever, who cares. But they're ripping C.J. Gardner-Johnson. Now, I'm not going to lie, it was funny, because C.J. Gardner-Johnson came out and said, I'm ready to put some belts to asses today, and then got his ass whooped. So they were laughing at that. But Slay, you're supposed to be the captain. Is that captain actions? And I think that, to me, is a snapshot of what is wrong with this team right now. And is that coaching? Is that the players? I think it's a combination of both. And it's going to be an interesting bye week. I'm not. I think the odds are against it, but I think you're minus 200, minus 250 that Nick survives the bye week, and maybe that's the best thing that would happen for this team. Who you bring in, I don't know. I know everybody's talking about Bill Belichick, but I just don't know. And like Isaiah Rodgers said, he pushed the player into Cooper DeJean on purpose, thinking it was going to call a penalty. without knowing the rules. Like that to me, Nick, that's on you. Like you're the in all the meetings and culture and making sure guys know the rules in situational football. That's on you for not making sure these guys knew the rules. And if it wasn't you and it was a special teams coach, it still falls on you. Like that's like worse. That's just dumb. Like literally pushed him into Cooper DeJean the first time on purpose because he thought it would be a penalty. He didn't think you weren't allowed to push them. I mean, that is just a flawed fundamental team. Like this team is flawed fundamentally. And I feel like they're broken. And I mean, they can't do much with the players right now, so maybe it is time to possibly look at a new coach. I think it might be a little early for that, but this team has too much talent on paper to be playing and making dumb mistakes like that. So maybe during the bye week, it's time to maybe look at that. I don't know. I know it's in baseball, he would have been fired. In the NBA, he likely would have been fired. Probably in the NHL as well. And you see in those sports, a new coach come in with the team. We saw it with the Phillies 2 years ago. So maybe that is, I don't know. At this point, it would not surprise me. I would not be disappointed. I would not be angry. And you know what? And if the players are angry, maybe that's a good thing. Maybe they use that as motivation to play up to the potential. But last week, I was called out for being too negative and being old school Philly. So let's look at this now before we wrap up the Eagles today. Let's look at this with a new Philly lens. They're 2-2 at the bye. They're able to get healthy. AJ, Lane, Devontae should be back after the bye. Sidney Brown should be back after the bye. And if you go back to my preseason prediction, I thought that there would be some growing pains. I guess it sort of is playing out that way. Not necessarily, I guess, the way I sort of expect it. But 2-2, I would take. I said I would not be surprised at 1-3, and then they come out and turn it around. So there is plenty of time. I think situationally, there's a lot of things that happened that we weren't necessarily expecting. But new Philly, 2-2 into the bye. It looks as though the NFC is kind of wide open this year. So it's not a lost cause right now. And I've seen the Eagles play worse. I know I'm seeing people post like 2008 and all these different examples of when the Eagles have played poorly, turned it around, and made deep runs. So, like I said, new Philly lens here. 2-2 going into the bye. Chance to get healthy. You have Sidney Brown coming back, which hopefully will take Avonte Maddox out of that safety position. It's up to the coaching, though. And I'm trying hard with the new Philly lens to be positive. It's tough to be positive when you're relying on this coaching staff. But we're going to do it. There's plenty of time. Let's look at it new Philly-wise. But that does lead us to today's question of the day. Can this team make the playoffs? I'm not going to say are they a playoff team because, I mean, they on paper, yes, they're a playoff team. Can this team make the playoffs after 4 games going 2-2? And look at it as the whole team and everything you've seen. So will this team make the playoffs? Probably is the better question. Let's go with that. Will this team make the playoffs? 267-495-8531. That'll get you into the Back to the Future voice and text line. Will this Philadelphia Eagles team make the playoffs? 267-495-8531. I don't know. I mean, sure, they can. I think the NFC, the way I've seen through 4 games all these teams play, certainly could happen. So, what do you think? 267-495-8531. That's the Back to the Future voice and text line. Get that. Anything else Philly sports related off of your chest. All right. Going into some sad news. And let's start with the Phillies. Pete Rose, the hit king, passed away yesterday. And say what you want about Pete Rose. I know he is probably one of the more polarizing figures in all of sports. Helped the Phillies win their first World Series championship in 1980. Had one hell of a career. most hits by anybody, in my opinion, should be in the Hall of Fame. And I know a lot of folks say, oh, he broke the cardinal rule of baseball. You gambled on baseball. And yes, he did. And he admitted that. I don't know if there's anything that says he did that while he was a player. A lot of that came while he was the manager of the Reds. And while it's illegal, yes, I know, I think the fact that he was betting on the Reds to win while he was the manager, I mean, that, yes, it's cringeworthy, but I mean, he's at least going out there doing the best he can as manager to try to win a game. So I think the Hall of Fame should not be based on what your character is, what your personal beliefs, whether you were a nice person or not, should be based on what you did. And I think with a lot of the Hall of Fames, it's too subjective when it comes to that, because Pete Rose, by any stretch of the imagination, is a Hall of Fame player. Just because his name is not up in Cooperstown, he's a Hall of Fame player. I mean, he won multiple championships with two different teams. The Phillies don't win the 1980 World Series without him. Played the game the right way. Played the game the way we get on Bryce Harper for not playing. Plays hard. Running out walks. Running out ground balls. And I know the rules have changed, but he ran over a catcher in the All-Star game. Like, he was trying to win every game and play as hard as he can. And you don't find too many players like that. So rest in Pete. Rest in peace, Pete. There's a tongue twister for you. But thank you for the 1980 World Series championship. Hopefully someday you will get into the Hall of Fame. And on one of my text chains, it was funny. One of my buddies said, wouldn't it be great if he had written into his rule or his will that if he does get inducted after he dies, he just gives him the finger and says, F you, I don't accept it. That would be great. All right, but rest in peace, Pete. Condolences to the Pete Rose family on your loss. But yes, Pete Rose, they don't win the 1980 World Series without Pete Rose. Bottom line. And we'll get more into the 1980 World Series here in a minute. We know who the Phillies will play. They will play the winner of the Mets Brewers. No Diamondbacks. Earliest you can play the Braves would be the NLCS. I got to be honest. I don't really want to play the Mets. The Mets are red hot. And if I had my choice, I'd rather play Milwaukee. That could be something that comes back to bite me in the ass. But I don't want any part of the Mets right now. Sorry. And I'm just being real. It's not. I'll gladly take the Mets. I think we can play well against the Mets. But if I have my choice, the Mets are reminding me a lot of the Phillies the past 2 years, and I don't want any parts of that. But let me know your thoughts. What do you think? Who would you rather play, the Mets or the Brewers? Gets underway on Saturday, and I don't know sort of how it's lined up. I have a feeling that game could be a primetime game. Looks like the NL games were at 3 and 8. I would totally rather play in the primetime game, but I guess we'll know more as the week goes on. And then from one sad piece of news to the other, Sixers Dikembe Mutombo passed away yesterday too of brain cancer. Did not even know he was sick. Sad there too. He was an integral part of that 2001 NBA Finals run. Again, just like Pete, they don't get there without Dikembe. And just was huge in that finals, in that playoff run. And he was the Robin to Allen Iverson's Batman. Always liked Dikembe, even back when he was at Georgetown and then with the Nuggets. And I did get the opportunity at one point to meet him, kind of. I used to belong to the Bally's in King of Prussia when I lived out there. And one day I'm running on the treadmill, and I look over, and it's Dikembe Mutombo running on the treadmill next to me. And if you've never seen somebody who is 7'1" in person standing next to them, he was huge. And what I think people don't understand or realize until you're standing next to him, and this was a couple years after, although he might have still been playing in the league at that time. But, I mean, he was a solid 7'1", too. Dude was just jacked. Didn't make a big deal about it. He kind of looked over and appreciated that I didn't say, "Oh my God, you're Dikembe Mutombo." Just kind of gave me the head nod. I wish he would have given me the finger wag, but rest in peace and condolences to Dikembe Mutombo. Condolences to his family. Just a horrible double dip of deaths for Philly sports yesterday. So rest in peace to Dikembe and Pete Rose, both gone. Dikembe at age 58, Pete at age 83. All right, so the Sixers did have their media day yesterday. Lots of positive things coming out of there. Joe said he's down 25, 30 pounds this offseason. He's still got a little bit more he wants to go, trying to work hard to stay healthy. Said he texted Daryl Morey after the playoff loss last year and said, "We need to do whatever we can to keep me healthy for the playoffs." He's like, so he's not worried about being an all-star, not worried about being all-NBA, all of that, which that's something I've been saying here. And the fact that Joe's saying that, I love. He said it's his job to empower the guys on the roster. He will step up when he needs to, but he believes in this team, which again, that's a huge change from the past. Usually, Joe felt like he needed to do all this and didn't really trust the roster. So, again, all positive there. Daryl Morey said him and Nick Nurse need to be smart, about load management and keeping these guys fresh for the playoffs. Again, I mean, that goes without saying, but I like actually hearing them say that. They're headed to the Bahamas today, and they're probably down there now for training camp. I am pumped. This is the year. And this is the time where Lucy says, "Come on, Charlie Brown, just kick the football. You'll get it this time." I know how this is going to end. I tell you this every Sixers season. I know how this is going to end. Just let me go. Let me go. Let me believe right now. Let me believe that this is the time it's going to be different. I'm going to kick that football this time. I'm not going to kick that football. Speaking of believe, Philly Goat has you covered for all of your Phillies needs. They got the Believe shirt, the ones the players wear on the field, the one that is Ted Lasso inspired. They have all kinds of Red October stuff for you, though. So go check them out. They have your election stuff. My Philly Fanatic election shirt should be coming later this week. I'll be sure to show it off when it comes. But they got you covered. Go check out what they have. The fans are back. Yes, I am excited for that. The fans are back. If you never wore a pair of canvas loafers, you have to go get the fans. They're so comfortable. I wore them all summer, and while the weather is like how it is, I'm still wearing my Schmitties, and I'm rotating between the fans. Apparently, my wife told me I had to put the Cape Mays away because it's after Labor Day. I don't know if I agree with that, but I haven't worn them. But go check them out. Use the promo code Jim Montgomery for 10% off your order. Excuse me, that's phillygoat.com, promo code Jim Montgomery for 10% off of your order. And then be sure to check out my boys over at the Clashing Conferences, doing great things. New episodes will be dropping this week, and basketball should be right around the corner, so stay tuned for that. Go check them out wherever you get your podcasts, as well as on YouTube. All right, I mentioned this earlier. Today, we're going to go back to 1980. And on this day in 1980, the Phillies came into play a half a game back of the Expos for first place in the NL East with 5 games left. They went out that day, beat the Cubs 5-0 at the Vet. It was their 3rd straight win. Mike Schmidt and Greg Luzinski each homered, but the story was Steve Carlton. Lefty threw a complete game 2-hitter, had 10 Ks, 2 walks, also helped his calls at the plate, went 2 for 3 with an RBI, and scored a run to help keep the pressure on the Expos. He was making his final start of the season, and that complete game put him up over 300 innings for the second time in his career. Ended the 1980 season with 304 innings, pitched 13 complete games, 286 strikeouts, had a 2.34 ERA, and 124 games en route to his third Cy Young Award of the 4 that he won. Coincidentally, when he went up over 300 innings in 1980, he became the last Major League Baseball pitcher to throw for 3 innings in a season, which is baffling to me because there were so many workhorse pitchers during the 80s. The closest was Steve Carlton, who in 1982 pitched 295 innings. I think Burt Blyleven pitched 293 in the mid-80s. And then as I was kind of going through checking the records, you could see as the years progressed, the innings went down. And just to give you a little comparison, this year the innings leader was Logan Gilbert with 208 and 2/3 innings. So the game certainly has changed from the 80s. But on this day, Steve Carlton pitched a complete game to go over 300 innings, became the last pitcher to go over 300 innings in a Major League Baseball season, and likely the last. Phillies, it was their third win in a row. They would go on to win 6 in a row to clinch that division, and we all know how that 1980 season ended, thanks in no small part to Pete Rose, who played a major role in getting them there and had the amazing play when Bob Boone dropped the foul ball. Pete Rose, Mr. Charlie Hustle, was right there to catch it, saving that game for the Phils. All right, it is October. The Phillies are in the postseason. They get underway on Saturday, get a few days off here to rest and scout the Mets and the Brewers. So I figured let's take a look at the great games in Phillies postseason history. And let's start with one of my favorite games. Game 1 of the 1993 NLCS, Phillies versus the Braves. Phillies had home field in that series, which I'm glad Major League Baseball went away for that. They basically used a rotating schedule. So the NL East had it one year, then the NL West had it. So the Braves, despite winning 104 games that year, ended up being the away team. But this turned out to be a huge deal for the Phillies having those games at home, especially here in Game 1. Obviously, the Braves came in heavily favored. They battled down the stretch with the Giants, who won 103 games that year. And they had a ridiculous pitching staff. Greg Maddux, John Smoltz, Tom Glavine, and Steve Avery, 2 20-game winners. I think Avery won 18. Ron Gant and David Justice each had over 30-some home runs. So they were a stacked team. Obviously, the Phillies were that fun bunch with Kruk, Dalton, Hollins, Dykstra, those guys coming out and all having career years. So in this game, the Phillies struck in the bottom of the first. John Kruk with an RBI single. The Braves battled back to take a 2-1 lead in the top of the fourth. And then Pete Incaviglia came up in the bottom of the fourth, hit a solo shot to tie it. It stayed that way until the sixth. Steve Avery loaded the bases, threw a wild pitch. John Kruk scored the go-ahead run there. Curt Schilling was absolutely masterful in this game, went 8 innings, 10 Ks, only gave up the 2 runs. But then the adventures began. Mitch Williams came in the ninth, walked his first batter, who then got to third base on what should have been an out. I still get frustrated and so nervous watching this. Ground ball to Dikembe, who came into the game for defensive purposes, overthrew the throw to first base, allowed the runner to get to third, who would later score on a ground out. However, everybody puts this one on Mitch Williams, but that ground out should have ended the game if Dikembe did not make the error. So Braves tied it up, and it goes into extra innings. Of course, top of the 10th, Mitch did not make it easy. He got 2 quick outs, and it looked like the Phillies were going to come up to bat. And then he gave up a single and a double, but was able to get out of it. And then the bottom of the 10th, it did not take long for the Phillies to walk this off. John Kruk doubled and then scored on the next batter when Dikembe hit a double. He went from GOAT to hero. I just remember being so ecstatic for this game, and it's kind of set the tone for that series. It was a back-and-forth series, but we'll talk more about this series as we go along. But the Phils won Game 1 of the 1993 NLCS 4-3. John Kruk probably should have been the player of the game. 2 for 4 with a walk, an RBI, and 2-run score. You can make the case for Schilling as well. But the Phillies take a 1-0 lead over the Atlanta Braves in the 93 NLCS with a 4-3 walk-off 10th inning victory. Dikembe going from GOAT to hero, allowing the Braves to tie it and then actually hitting the game-winning double. The baseball gods giveth and the baseball gods take it away. But that was today's Red October great game in Phillies postseason history. Game 1 of the 93 NLCS. On this day in 1980, Phillies beat the Cubs 5-0. Steve Carlton pitched a complete Game 2 hitter, going over 300 innings for the second time in his career and becoming the last Major League Baseball player to throw 300 innings in a season. Let me know your thoughts on anything we talked about today. Question of the day: can the Eagles make the playoffs? Better question: will the Eagles make the playoffs? 267-495-8531. Get your Dikembe, Mutombo, or Pete Rose thoughts out as well. Condolences to their families. Rest in peace to both of them. Lots to talk about on the Back to the Future voice and text line. Expected to be popping today as we head into kind of a dead week. Not really much going on this week in Philly sports as we wait for the Phillies postseason opponent, and the Eagles are on a bye. Remember, don't try to impress others. Live the kind of life that if you met yourself, you would be impressed. Take that with you as you go through your week. This has been This Day in Philly Sports History for October 1st, 2024. My name is Jim Montgomery, and until next time, I'll see you when I see you.